Hey guys, Mr. Schlenker here. I'm going to talk today about what goes into writing a good introduction. So as we get started in writing your thematic analysis essay, we know that you have gone through several steps to plan what you're actually going to say in the essay. So now is the time to think about using that information and putting it in to put together a good introduction for that essay. So as we've talked about in the past, a good introduction should include three things. One, your hook or grabber, right? And the purpose of that is to pull your reader in, to hook them in, to grab their attention. The second part is, of course, the method of development, and that is to give any background information, answer any questions that your reader might have about what's to come in your essay, and to really kind of preview what's to come later on in the body of your essay. Kind of prepare them for what's to come. And we talked about how the hook and grabber is really kind of very broad, and then it gets more narrow with the method development. And then, of course, the last part of the introduction is going to be that thesis statement. That is the backbone of your paper. Everything that you say in the body of your paper should relate back to that thesis statement. And by the end of your introduction here, it has become very narrow, and you're making this good, strong statement at the end. Okay, so what I wanted to do today is kind of model for you how I would go about writing my introduction for an essay that I've prepared, and I'm going to do my introduction on The Most Dangerous Game, a short story that we all read together, and I just wanted to show you how I would kind of work this out. So I will start with just that, just to kind of get me started, and we'll talk about formatting and all that stuff later on. But I wanted to use an example of a short story that we've all worked with. All right, so I know that I want to start with a good grabber, something to hook and pull my reader in. So I was, you could think about using a good strong quote from the text that really relates to your thesis, really your theme, or you could start with a short little anecdote that relates, that the reader could relate to. You could start with a good, interesting, like statistic or fact that would be shocking or interesting for the reader. For me, what I'm going to start with here is, because The Most Dangerous Game is such a great imagery in the text, that I wanted to start with some imagery to pull my reader in. So I'm going to start with something like, I imagine if my reader was like in The Most Dangerous Game, like Ransford was. So say something like, the jungle closes, closes in around you. And I know we talked about trying to not use the word you and I and we inside your paper, and we don't want to do that in a formal paper, but for a grabber to pull your reader in, I think that's fine. All right, so the jungle closes in around. I'm trying to increase it here, so it's dark. I might say extremely dark. All right, some good imagery there. Now I want to use some visual imagery, so maybe some auditory imagery as well. So we want to appeal to maybe the reader's different senses, right? So appeal to the reader's hearing here. So what would they hear? So you can hear, let's say you can hear your heartbeat. Thick and, let's say, heavy. Beating within your brain. Like that. That's okay. Now, of course, like, I'm just trying things out here. If I mess up, and I want to make a change later on, that's totally fine. But I'm trying to get the idea down here. All right. It suddenly hits. suddenly hits you. This could be it. The end. Right? I have become prey. This may be how I die. Ooh. Alright. I like that so far. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But you know what? This is just a draft. I'm trying to make guys down. So I'm hoping that my reader goes, oh, well, this is pretty intense, though. And this, hopefully will pull them right into it. So this, I will say, will kind of serve as my grabber for now. If I want to add something into it later, I can. But now I got to move on to my method development. And here's where I want to give a little bit of background information. So I need to make sure that the reader knows what story I'm talking about here, right? So I'm going to start with the short story. Now, if you were doing, Animal Farm, or you're doing Lord of the Flies, or another work, you would say, the novel or the great, the great work. Animal Farm is actually a novella. So I want to say the name of the story. Now, I'm going to put this in quotation marks because it's a short story, but if I was talking about Lord of the Flies or Animal Farm or a novel, then I would underline it. But since it's a short story, I'm going to put it in quotation marks. And then I want to tell my author. So, of course, if I'm reading Lord of the Flies, it would be William Golding, or if I'm reading Animal Farm, it would be George Orwell. By Richard, Connell is our author. Now, if I make a mistake here, remember, you could always just go on, get that red squiggly mark, click on it, right-click, and then Google Docs will help you out. Brings this horrible, brings horrible scene to life for the reader. The short story, The Most Dangerous Game of Richard Connell, brings this horrible scene to life for the reader. So one of the things I want to do in my method development is I want to connect what I'm going to start to say back to the grabber or the hook, right? So that they know that there was some point of me bringing that hook grabber in there. Okay, so now I want to say, within the pages of this short story, the reader meets Ransford, right? And Ransford is our protagonist, and we know that he is a great hunter. We want to tell that because that's a little background information about him. I want to say something about how he, quickly becomes, the prey in the story. Now, I don't need to give all kinds of information because I'm assuming like my reader probably has read this story before. And we're writing a story, writing the essay, you know that I have read, your reader, Mr. Schlenker, has read the text several times. And so you don't need to, tell me every single piece of background information because I've got a good sense of it, obviously, with the 6,000 times that I've read these stories and taught it and read a bunch of essays that students have written over the years. So within the page of the short story, the reader meets Ransford, the great hunter, who quickly becomes really the prey of General Zaroff. Now, this gives me a little bit of background information. Now I know that General Zaroff is a character. If I'm the reader, General Zaroff's character, and Ransford is really kind of the main character. And I will mention him as the protagonist in a minute, Ransford. But I want to start to narrow down my ideas a little bit so that I'm getting the reader ready for the thesis. Okay, so I'm going to say something like in the beginning of the text. The reader sees. Reader, we'll say, observes, maybe. I'm going to try to play around with different words here. In the beginning of the text, the reader observes Ransford as a close-minded hunter who shows no empathy for the animals he hunts. Animals. I'm going to switch that. So now I'm getting a little bit closer to getting to my thesis. Well, I don't know if I want to start with the protagonist. We'll say Ransford as the protagonist. Right, so I need to tell him right there that he is the main character, really. That over the course of the story, he's going to begin to realize what it's like. So Ransford as a protagonist changes throughout the, let's say, the story this time, because I think I called it the text last time. Changes throughout the text, or changes out throughout the story. It begins to understand the life of a hunted animal. We'll say the life of, we'll say of a hunted animal. Okay, so now I feel like I'm close to where I need to be. Switch that around. Close to where I need to be to hit my reader now with the thesis statement. Now, is this at the absolute perfect introduction? No, right? This is still just a draft, but I'm getting my ideas down and I'm following the idea of the grabber, method development, and then hitting with a thesis at the end. So my thesis, and I've already planned this just like you've already planned your thesis and you've got your evidence and all that stuff for your essay. I'm going to say something like this for my thesis. So Richard Connell's theme in, and I got to put a comma right before the in, Most Dangerous Game, is that the only way man can truly learn empathy is through direct experience. Okay, so I think this is pretty good. Now I look and I've got my grabber here. So this is my grabber. I've got good solid method of development here. I'm just going to put M-O-D for method development there. And here at the end, looks like I spelled experience wrong, I've got my thesis. And everything looks pretty good for a draft experience. And I think this needs to be closed-minded too. Everything looks pretty good for a draft. And really that's what we want to do. So when it comes to you writing yours, take the time to think about the three parts: the grabber, the method of development, and the thesis. And you can use your outline if you were given an outline. If you'd like to use the outline, you can use it. And just think about, this is the best way a reader can really understand what you want to say. You got to pull them in first. You got to give them that background information that they need, kind of preview those subtopics, and then hit them with the thesis at the end. Is it going to be perfect the first time you do it? No, but you got to get something down, and you got to get thinking about a direction for you. All right. Hopefully this will help you in creating your introduction. And if you have questions, let me know, or watch the video again. All right. Peace out.